Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk About Houses. I'm Todd.
I'm Juana.
Okay, so today we are going to talk about whether housing is doomed or not.
Very doomed.
It's super doomed, and we have data going back over a decade
Yes.
that will show the trends. You can see how we got here, and you can see where we're going. This thing tells a picture of where we're going.
Okay, so if you like charts, stick around. Todd has outdone himself. He's got...
I spent with the production team, the 3 or 4 people we have on staff that create the charts. We were literally spending like all day developing these charts.
Well, that and eating chocolate mousse.
Eating chocolate mousse. We had hair and makeup working on us while we were,
Eating chocolate mousse.
Yeah, set designers and lighting guys were everyone's working. Everybody that takes to make the show was literally working on the charts with me.
Oh, I thought they were working on the chocolate mousse.
They were working on the chocolate mousse. Okay, so this is what got us down this path. We found all this great information. Okay, I saw the headline. This came from Redfin, and immediately thought, oh my gosh, another thing that's going to crash the housing market. Okay, this is the headline. Home purchases fell through at the highest rate in nearly a year in August.
Okay, so that means that when somebody gets their offer accepted for whatever reason, they are canceling the contract. That's what falling through of a home purchase means.
Okay, so we obviously thought, well, it must have been, first of all, it says nearly a year. So it could have been like 8 months, right? So which is the worst of the last 8 months, right? And
by the way, they're nearly a year. It dates back to last fall. I think it was October or November.
Yeah, okay. And we thought this must have been a massive difference for them to make a big deal about it, put a whole article. Like it must have gone from, like it's normally like 15%, it must have gone to 30%, like a third of them canceled.
Huge.
Okay. All right. So I'll read this is the first sort of thing from the article. Some home buyers got cold feet as mortgage rates hit the highest level in over 2 decades, and prices continue to rise. But buyer demand and new listings have stabilized following months of declines. Mortgage rates higher, prices higher. Buyer demand and new listings have stabilized followed months of declines. What most important thing that caught me in there was that the number of new listings were declining.
Right. So 2 things I got out of that. First of all, the idea that somehow after you get your offer accepted, you go out to get financing and you get sticker shock, because let's face it, that's not the way the game works, right?
Right. The
first thing you do is you go out there and you get qualified for a loan if you're not paying cash, and you get an estimate of, hey, this is the going rate with your credit, with all of your financial information. This is the type of loan that you're looking at. This is the type of interest rate. This is your likely payment in this price range, right? So before you ever make that offer, kind of where you're going to be. So the idea that buyers got cold feet over, once they got their accepted offer, over the money part, not so much. The second part is, which is true, which is closer to truth, is that they are canceling these contracts now. But what's the reason? A lot of the reason is because sellers are choosing to decline requests for repairs. So then the buyer has a choice. They can take the home as is, or they can say, you know what, Mr. Seller, since your home is so great and you're so enamored with it, you can keep it. And then moving on, I'm going to find another home that is in better condition. So that is a lot of what's happening out there. I think there's more of that than the sticker shock, because like I said, people generally do not go shopping for a house without a loan in their back pocket, so they know what it is that they can afford.
Okay, so here's the actual numbers. Ready for this? Nationwide, nearly 60,000 home purchase agreements were canceled in August, equal to 15.7% of homes that went under contract that month. That's up from 14.3% a year earlier and marks the highest percentage since October 2022, when mortgage rates surpassed 7% for the first time in 2 decades. So it's up 1.4% more than last year. And that's, oh my God, 1.4%. That's we're going to make a massive article about it, okay? Here is the chart. This shows you all the way back to 17. This chart is also misleading because the bottom is 8%, but you can see that we had more cancellations in the summer of last year, and then we also had more cancellations in 2020, but we're not significantly different. And remember, Wanda, we had one of the new home builders announced that the fourth quarter they had like 16% of all their houses canceled. And everyone thought, oh my gosh, it's just going to crash the housing market because all those homes are going to flood the market. Well, they just all went back under contract. So of these 15.7% homes, which is less than a year ago, right? They couldn't even go back a year and get a higher number. They had to go back less than a year because if they went back a year, they couldn't. The headline wouldn't have made any sense.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting. But 100% of these homes, just the next buyer, they'll just go under contract.
Absolutely.
With, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So this statistically is not a significant amount. It's not like.
It's a sufficient amount to validate the headline so that it is technically correct, but it is not a sufficient amount to actually mean anything as far as a change in the market.
No, not at all. Okay. Now here's the next chart. I found this one. This is absolutely fantastic chart. This is a highlight of 2023. It's got two things in here, month over month, year over year. We're going to leave this up. One and I'll talk about it a little bit. Median sale price, okay, month over month, down 0.2%, Wanda. Happens every year. Literally every single year, if you went back, home prices start declining in like May. And they decline until like October, they start going back up again, right?
Right.
It's a seasonal thing. It's just how it goes, right? Zillow has done a ton of data. They'll tell you the exact date when the home prices flip and start going back up, right? Okay. Year over year, though, up 3%. Can you believe that? Because we were told a year ago. Remember, interest rates a year ago today hadn't hit 7% yet. Today they're up over 7%, but home prices are up 3%. Home prices are going up.
Right. Well, that's the resilience of the market due to tight inventory. So when you have more buyers chasing fewer goods, you're going to see price increase.
Okay. Pending sales, homes sold, all lower because of new listings. No new listings. We've got a great chart to show you on this. Are down, but all the rest of these numbers, sales are down. It has nothing to do with buyer demand.
Correct. So the number of sales is down because the number of listings is down. So we are simply doing less transactions, not for less money, but just less transactions because there are less homes for sale.
Here's the next one. Months of supply is 2. It says minus 0.2 months, but that's actually better. It's not worse because that meant it was 2.2. So we had 2.2 months of supply a year ago. So that meant in 2.2 months, we would have sold all the houses. We only have enough supply for 2 months. We would sell all the houses in 2 months if no new homes come on the market. At the current rate, they're being absorbed.
Right.
And that's substantial difference. Kind of opposite what we thought when we heard interest rates would go up. We thought the conventional wisdom, right, was it the number, bless you?
Excuse me?
The number of homes on the market would increase and prices would drop. But that didn't happen.
Okay.
Probably because of that, right? Median days on the market, basically about the same. And then there's some other stuff in here that's basically statistically not significant, except for the fact that the average fixed-year mortgage rate is 0.23% month over month more and 1.85 year over year. You can still get a 5-point-something% rate this time last year.
Right. Well, and you can this year, but it just won't be a fixed rate product.
Okay, but talk about this. Home prices are up 3% with interest rates up almost 2%. That shows that the housing market is resilient, and there's a shortage of homes and still an excess number of buyers.
Correct. Yeah, so this is the thing that we've kind of been beating to death in the last few months is that we just have a lot more buyers than what we have homes on the market. Now, I understand the affordability issue, but all that does is push the people on the bottom into rentals and leaves everybody else in the marketplace. You know, does it mean that somebody that was looking at a $700,000 home is now looking at maybe a $500,000 home? Maybe, but they're still looking, they're still going to buy a home. They're just not going to buy in the same price point. So it just changes the price point of the buyers left in the market, and the buyers left in the market still outnumber the homes available on the market.
Okay, here's the next chart. Now, I'll explain this chart really quick. That 0.0% line, this is the year over year change. This is not the absolute price. If you looked at absolute prices, it's just a chart basically going up, okay? So this is the year-over-year changes. Everywhere that it's above the line, meaning it meant that year-over-year home prices were up. And you can see that spike, which is the end of 2021, beginning of 22, when home prices went up the most. And then you can see now again, we're above that. Home prices are going up year over year. And that is the 3% that we just read about on there. So this gives you a good idea as to sort of what the market looks like for home prices. But what's interesting is this: at the headline, it says home prices pose the biggest increase in almost a year. So meaning you go back year over year, and in the last year, this is the highest, because we actually had some small declines. It looked like it was down maybe 3 or 4% at the peak, like peak to trough, the worst, top to the bottom.
But look, there is volatility in the marketplace in any real estate market. So even in a really calm year, which I think this year has been a calm year, you're going to have changes up and down throughout the year. So this is a normal thing. It's called a market.
Normal years, home prices from the spring to the fall drop 2 or 3%. So dropping 4%, nationally what they did last year was not a market crash. That just happens every year, right? And you can see that happens every year. Okay, here's another quote from the article. Activity in the housing market is sluggish due to rising mortgage rates, but prices remain high because the buyers who are out there are competing for a limited number of homes. So talk about, because everyone talks about affordability, but affordability, who does that really affect?
Affordability affects the people at the bottom. Everybody else still has enough funds and enough credit to purchase a home. Maybe not the home that they originally had their sights on, but they still are able to purchase a home. It's the people at the bottom who are getting pushed out into rentals, and they're going to have to figure out a different way of doing that. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't buy a home. It just means that they need to find a different way to do it. And by that, I mean, maybe they buy the home with another family member. Maybe they do an owner will carry. There are all kinds of different ways to do it. There are some government programs out there with down payment assistance, and that's a possibility. So there are lots of different ways that people can still purchase homes. It's just they just have to be a little more determined to do it. Okay.
There are going to be, in the next 12 months, between 3 and 4 million homes transacted, resale on the resale market. There are 336 million people in this country. So basically, 1% of all people will be able to buy a house next year.
Right, but that doesn't mean that you have 100% who want to swap houses next year. So let's kind of face that. So how many people actually have the desire, have the means, have the opportunity, find the right house? I mean, so there are a lot of different things that go into that. So the idea that, somehow we have 36 million people who want to buy a home and we're only going to have 5 million people who will buy homes. Okay, fine. But the balance of 29 million people are not buying homes for a variety of reasons, and they don't all have to do with affordability. I think affordability is a red herring, to be honest. I think it's something that is popular to talk about. I think it's clickbaity. I think it's political. I don't think it tells the whole story. The whole story is much more colorful, much more interesting, and it reflects the complexity of the human nature.
I think the most important thing about this is if only 1% of Americans are buying a house next year, the average person who says, well, I make $40,000 a year and I can't afford a house at current prices, at current interest rates, well then, unfortunately, you're one of the 99% of people who's not going to be buying a house next year.
Okay, but so in all fairness, let's say that you make $200,000 a year. There are markets that you still can't buy a house in.
Yeah, San Diego. Well, San Diego you could, but you wouldn't be buying a...
So you make $40,000 a year. There are markets that you can buy a home in.
Enid, Oklahoma.
It just may
Mercedes, Texas.
It just may not be that market. So again, this is a lot more complex. And okay, you want to buy a home, that's great, but you want to buy a home on a golf course in a guard-gated community, and your budget is more like track home, down the street. That's something that you need to reconcile, right? So there are all kinds of different things that have to be reconciled in that. So I think it's a much more complicated story. So to say it's affordability, I think that just tries to put everybody in one bucket, and clearly that is not the case.
Here's the next quote. Home prices will likely remain elevated for the foreseeable future, says Redfin economics research lead Chen Zhao. The Federal Reserve still has more work to do in its battle against inflation, which means mortgage rates are unlikely to come down anytime soon. As long as rates remain high, homeowners will be reluctant to sell, and that lack of homes for sale will keep prices high because it means buyers are duking it out for a limited supply of houses. Two things. When the crash bros and housing doomers talk about the housing market, they always leave out these two things, supply and demand, which when they meet at a point called price. They talk about all these crazy answers like the price of eggs is so high, that's going to crash the housing market because people have to buy eggs. They don't have to buy a house though, right? And like everything's going to crash. They never talk about supply and demand. Like you never find a chart where they talk about the supply of homes and the demand for buyers. They always talk about some other crazy tangential thing that are inputs to those, but then they don't talk about all the other inputs to those things that are really what's driving the market. We have like charts that are going to show you all this in a minute.
Right. And the people who are, screaming about affordability, they should be much more excited about inflation because inflation is a tax. Think about that. Inflation is more like a tax, right? Because it just costs you money. It costs more money than it should for goods and services. And that excess money is like a tax, but it's different than a tax in that you don't get to deduct it. So the people that are screaming about affordability should be much more concerned about inflation because that hurts everybody. And in particular, it hurts people at the bottom.
Okay, here's a chart of buyer demand. This goes over the last 11 years. It goes all the way back to 2012. And what's interesting about this is you can see that buyer demand is stronger now than it was in 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, and about the same as 2017. Mm-hmm. And then the reason buyer demand was higher for 2 years is because interest rates were artificially low and people were worried about inflation and people were out there trying to get rid of cash. And we had all these we had the work from home. So we had like a perfect storm of a couple things all happen at once that sort of push people into housing, right? But some of those things haven't really gone away. We still have work from home. We still have inflation, right? We just don't have the low interest rates, but we still have this substantial buyer demand. And what's amazing is if I had pulled this chart out and showed it to you and said, what are interest rates doing today? You'd have probably said probably the same as 2018 or 17 because the demand is the same for homes. And I said, well, what if prices were 40% higher than they were in 2017 or 18? You would say, oh, well, interest rates probably lower because how would we have the same demand with much higher interest rates?
Right. So that's a really good point.
Not knowing what's going on, if I just showed you the chart in the past, you would probably not be able to figure out mortgage rates are over 7%.
No, you would not because you've got limited information, which is kind of the way the crash bros are dealing with the housing market.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Here's the next awesome chart. Now, this is the number of new listings that came on the market. Now, what you'll notice about this is you can see seasonality where it, more in certain parts of the year or less. It kind of goes up and down. But then you see the massive drop off, which was just the first month of the pandemic when you couldn't really get an agent to come over to the house because everyone was locked down.
Well, because none of us were allowed to leave our homes.
Yeah, we actually were told for a month we could not show homes. And you couldn't go to somebody's house and take their listing. You couldn't, there was nothing going in the MLS, right? And then you
couldn't take pictures. You couldn't do anything.
Yeah, they didn't want you going in somebody else's house. They were trying to keep people away from each other. Of course, you could go to Costco with 10,000 other people and buy stuff. And this is before masks even. You could go to Costco in the store and places like that, but you couldn't go in somebody's house.
Which you did because we ran out of toilet paper. Remember that?
Yeah, you had to go to your neighbors and borrow toilet paper. Okay, but what's really interesting is the far right side of this chart. This is the number of new listings. Look at how they drop off starting in September of 2022. As soon as interest rates get high, people are like, I'm not selling. This does not look like it's just going to start screaming back up. This is going to stay depressed. And as long as this stays depressed, the supply of of homes available are going to stay depressed.
Right. So sellers are buyers ultimately, right? Most people, because if you sell your home, you're going to have to live somewhere, so you will be a buyer. And so these are the people who do not want to sell. So we don't have this turning of properties. And that's really what we're seeing with this low inventory is that turning of properties.
This is probably more correlated to interest rates than anything we've seen. If I had shown you this chart a couple years ago, you would have and said, what do you think is causing people not want to sell their houses?
Well, two things. One is interest rates and the other one is inflation. Okay?
Okay.
Because inflation is playing a huge role in this.
Okay.
Because remember, houses tend to keep up with inflation.
Or at least hedge against it.
Right.
Like you could make an argument, because they're going to say it in the video. They're going to go, but Todd, we've had 4%, 5% inflation. The home price is only at 3%. Okay, but that's a lot better than everything else you own that's been depreciating.
Right.
And why would you get rid of it and turn it into cash, which is going to depreciate at a lower rate? And if you say, but Todd, I'll go put that in a money market that pays 4.5%. That's great. But the 4.5% go away tomorrow, and now you don't have a house.
That's right. And look, in the whole inflation thing, it isn't over. When you're looking at what's in the headlines, which is the strike in Hollywood, the strike with the auto workers, these are two groups, but there are lots of other groups out there also vying for more pay. More pay just means more money chasing fewer goods, and that's what inflation's all about. So I'm not arguing that people shouldn't be paid fair wages and whatnot. I'm not here to debate what these people are being paid, but I'm simply pointing out that when this is all over and they do get whatever it is that they get, they will have more money to spend. And they won't necessarily have better purchasing power. That's really the biggest issue.
Yeah.
Is because inflation actually decreases your purchasing power. So you might make more money, but you buy less goods because that's what inflation does. And that's what I meant by that it's this kind of insidious tax.
UPS drivers just got pay raises to where they'll be making $170,000 a year for driving trucks and delivering packages. So, I mean, that's a lot of money to like drive a truck and deliver. They're unionized.
They are,
and that's the total compensation of their.
But have you seen how good they look in the shorts?
They look good in the shorts for the most part. They wear the shorts even if it's like really cold outside.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Here is the next chart. This is the active listings. Okay. This is the total number of listings at any given time in the U.S. Now, when you go all the way back to the left, you see March of 2012, and each one of these, those little white lines are just the separators of every 2 years, right? So you can see that we were kind of hovered around this number, 2 to 3 million. Some of this was still coming down from the REO boom and the housing crash where we were over 4 million homes. But you can see this trend where we're at the lowest now, even lower than we've ever been in the last decade. Matter of fact, you could probably go back 30 years and not find less available homes. This is called supply. This is the supply side of the equation. Demand is down, but supply is down. So the two shifts in those curves are what's causing home prices to stay elevated, right?
Right. So we still have, like I said, more buyers than we have homes available for them to buy. So that's what's bringing stability to some housing markets and actually increased prices and multiple offers in others.
Okay. The quote at the bottom, I'm going to read this. I think it's important. Housing supply is an all-time low, okay, because homeowners feel locked into their low mortgage rates. For many, selling their home and buying a new one would mean taking on a much higher monthly payment. And we used to play this game where we would wash the old loan by buying a new house and then getting a loan that's, 0.5 or 1% or 1.5% less. Every 7 years, if you stepped into a new loan, you get a better rate because starting from the 80s, when interest rates were 18%, then they went into the low teens, then the 10s, then the 8s, then the 6s, then the 4s. And even back here, if you look at 2012, I mean, interest rates were still like between 4 and 5. And they did drop quite a bit, but most of that happened just in 2020 and 2021 because even if you bought a house in 2017 or 18, you still probably got high 3, low 4%. You
Right.
didn't get a smoking deal. You were still paying it. We had a period of 8 years where interest rates didn't change more than 1%.
Right. Because, the Fed's rate was basically zero.
Right, the Fed rate was zero, and of course that's caused other problems moving forward. That's basically the reason why housing is locked up. Now, here's the other thing, Juana, because this has to be said. Let's say the Fed never tanks interest rates, does all the QE, does all this stuff. And we have a normal, healthy market. We don't have work from home, but we still had 4% rates just like we had been. We probably wouldn't have seen this crazy run up in prices, right? Home prices would probably not have gone up 20% a year, 2 years in a row.
Probably not. They would have still increased because we're still building less homes than we have household formations.
Okay.
So we would still see appreciation because we still would have more buyers than homes. So that's pretty much a given. Would we have seen this dramatic appreciation? Probably not.
Okay, talk about this one last thing, and then we can wrap up the video.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got to live somewhere.
Yes.
We have people that own homes,
mm-hmm.
and we have people trying to own homes.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that are trying to own homes are in more greater number than the people trying to get rid of the homes they own.
Right.
Right now that's happening, right?
Yes.
But we know fundamentally we probably have 6, 7, 8 million less homes available that are built, that are out there even
mm-hmm.
for people, based on like what you said, household formations. And we know we're going in the wrong direction, meaning that the number of homes that are being built are not keeping up. They're less than half of all household formations. So if 2 new households form, they build 0.8 houses. So basically you have to have 10 new households form to build 4 new houses. Mm-hmm. Where do you see this in 10 years if the builders keep doing this? We're going to build 800,000 houses a year when we're adding 2 million household formations a year.
A robust apartment market? I mean, people have to live somewhere.
Okay, so you think it'll be multifamily? More people live in apartments.
What else are you going to do? I mean, you have to live somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So if you can't purchase a home because they're simply not available, or you can't find the right home, or whatever the reason may be, you're still going to have to live somewhere. So then you're going to rent, right? So you're going to rent a single family home, a townhouse, a condo, an apartment. You're going to rent something.
Do you think, though, that as an investor, this is even a better potential future for you, knowing that we have a shortage of homes and that you have this larger population of people now who are forced to rent because interest rates are high and maybe they can't afford it, so they don't have affordability. So now they don't have a choice, they're forced to rent. Mm-hmm. And you're in a position where you hold the asset that they're forced to live in. So you could basically charge more for it and then have a shorter vacancy period.
Right, and that's pretty much what's happening in a lot of places in the country. Obviously, it differs by market, but I think in most places, because there simply is not sufficient supply to meet the demand, I think landlords have some choices. Now, I'm not saying that landlords are going to gouge people, but I'm saying that landlords will have maybe a better choice of tenants. So maybe you're not charging more money, but you're getting a higher quality tenant because you have a bigger applicant pool from which to choose. So there are all kinds of ways to look at this. Okay?
Yeah.
So what did you think of the charts? We had lots of them.
Yep.
We had an interesting discussion and hope you enjoyed it. If we entertained you, made you laugh, made you roll your eyes. Did you roll your eyes? Please remember to like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the video. Leave us comments. You don't have to agree with us. Do tell us if you rolled your eyes. And we'll see you on the next video. Bye.
Bye.